It's General Knowledge Wednesday, too, but we have an issue that kind of dwarfs what we're going to do with General Knowledge Wednesday. It's an issue like this is always like, the media's blowing it out of proportion. Well, we didn't do anything. We did nothing. We didn't cause this issue. We're merely reacting to the issue. And, of course, the issue is Nick Castellanos and what happened in the previous series that would force the Phillies to bench him on yesterday in the second game of this series. He was benched for defensive reasons in the 8th inning of the first game for Rojas, and then they moved everybody around. And he must not have liked it because we don't know what he said, but I'm guessing what he said. I'm guessing that he said, "That's BS, MF."
Wow.
That's what I think crossed the line. I think he added the curse word after the BS. That's BS. That's what I think Rob Thomson reacted to. And when you do that in the dugout, you do it in front of people in the dugout.
And then you have to make a show of it.
Well, Rob Thomson had choices. He could have ignored it, and a lot of managers would ignore it this day and age, or he could have reacted, which he did immediately. He got ahead of the story and said, this was what happened after I benched him, and I didn't like it. It was inappropriate. And then the next day we find out that he doesn't put him in the lineup. So there are people on both sides of this argument, including our morning guy, John Kincade, who said it didn't deserve a benching. I certainly think it did.
Yeah.
If he did this in like the corridor or so, or nobody saw it, then maybe you have a little more leeway as a manager. You're still angry with him, and then you have a one-on-one meeting with him, and you bring him in, and nobody knows what it is. But since he did it in the dugout, and since he did it in front of the team, the manager has to react, or he loses his whole clubhouse.
Agreed. I feel like you have to set the precedent that I will not be spoken to in that regard. I will not be disrespected in my own dugout during the game. I made a decision. I'm the manager. You have to accept it. You don't have to like it, but you do have to accept it. And I can't imagine that Castellanos, if once he cooled off, realized that you can't talk to your manager that way. I think it's great that he has probably a great relationship with Topper, but at the same time, you can't speak to him. Like, no one should be spoken to that way without repercussions.
The other factor is a lot of people, well, how could you break a consecutive game played streak? He only trails Cal Ripken by 2,400. Come on. Is that relevant at all? He's going to break the streak?
I think we go back to last year when, Castellanos was struggling mightily at the start of the season and for chunks of it, really, until about the All-Star break. And there was constant calls about should you give him a day off? And Rob Thomson said, listen, it's important for Nick Castellanos to play every day. I appreciate that about him, and I'm going to play him every day. So I think people are kind of latching onto that aspect of it, being like, well, that's important to him. Well, it's also important to treat your manager with respect.
Exactly, especially when you just point out the manager had his back all last year. Yep. As far as playing every day, when people say maybe you give him a day off. So I think the right thing was that it's like when Charlie Manuel benched Jimmy Rollins.
For not running it out.
I mean, occasionally, no matter how big the player is, in front of your team, you've got to keep that kind of respect going. And they see, wow, he's gonna bench him for doing that. I mean, that's a message to us all. That's the way I think Thomson processed it as an old school guy. Now, a newer school guy may have let it roll off his back, but that it was something said that was vile to Rob Thomson.
I think it could have, who knows, maybe it pushed the line of whatever Rob Thomson deems. Rob Thomson has probably heard all of it. Let's be honest, okay? He's been around baseball a long time. I'm sure he's been called a bunch of things. I'm sure he's been around guys when they speak of things that are completely inappropriate for whatever the time and the cause is. But I think it's the situation, as you mentioned. I think it's doing it in the dugout. Yes, I'm sure something that said was probably something that Rob Thomson has heard before. But the timing of it and the way that the reaction of him being pulled from the game and being said in front of the rest of the team, I think is probably what really put him.
He could have used the P word.
Could have used a couple of different words.
Could have used the P word, like
much more derogatory terms.
You're a blank right. For doing that. That's weak. In other words, saying that's weak. But he said something that triggered him. So here's the ramifications now as people talk about this. Could this backfire? I heard John say this. That could have backfired. How? What Castellanos going to sulk? Well, if he sulks, that's totally on him.
That's on him, yeah.
And he's going to be letting it down his own family, his teammates. If he sulks, it's like the Alec Boehm thing way back. You're going to sulk in front of us. We don't have any time for that. We're trying to survive, and you're going to sulk because of something the manager did? We don't have any empathy for that.
And that's the thing. At some point, you have to be the player that everybody wants you to be. You have to step up. And if you're not going to step up, then you're going to get called on the carpet. And that's what happened here. And so Nick Castellanos has to take his medicine. He says, I respect the decision and whatever else. The quote was a very short quote about I know when he made the decision and, I have to accept it.
Yeah.
Now his next step is to go back out there and just prove that it was just a one-off. Because if you let it, like you said, fester or sulk or mope about it, well, then now you're affecting yourself and you're affecting your team. And I would have an issue with that as a teammate if I see him out there pouting. I don't know that Nick Castellanos is going to do that, but if it were to happen, I would be like, what are we doing here, dude?
Yeah. He's not my favorite guy, frankly, on this team, but he does play with energy, and he does play hard, and he does do most of the right things, working out and running hard, and he's turned himself into an average outfielder when it looks like he would struggle because of his lack of athleticism. But so I'll give him credit for what he's done. He's turned into a singles hitter, which I don't like. But this is a whole new thing. This I think is something that maybe can galvanize a team when you do something like that as a manager. So I think Rob Thomson. I like Rob Thomson a lot. There are a lot of people that said he never makes his players accountable. Well,
there you go.
There's a situation, right? Ray Dunn is with us today. Ray, your thoughts on this whole Castellanos situation?
Does he think twice the next time he wants to bring in a defensive replacement? Because ultimately, your best defensive outfield is not one with Nick Castellanos. I understand last night it's hilarious the timing of the world where Kepler loses a ball in the lights and he ends up dropping that ball and it ends up being a problem for the Phillies in the game where they don't have Castellanos there. Castellanos' range, I'm not even going to bank on him getting to that baseball anyways. But the point is, does this instance of Castellanos going back at his manager make him think twice about making a defensive replacement late, and does that end up costing his team later on down the line?
How so?
Because your best defensive outfield does not include Nick Castellanos. Late in the game, he's justified to he's always justified because he's the manager. But that move specifically in the 8th inning of a game that's a close game with the Marlins, he's justified to bring Rojas into that game for defense.
Yeah, but why hasn't he done that in the past?
It might be something he's trying out to do more now. At some point, Castellanos can work on his outfield, work on his game, all this. He is who he is.
Has he really killed them in the outfield, though? He hasn't killed them.
Well, he doesn't kill you in errors. He kills you. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. The batting average in balls in play against the Phillies is one of the worst in baseball. Part of that's because they don't have the range. He doesn't have the range as a right fielder. Balls drop in. It's like, oh, yeah, that dropped in. A guy that actually has a little bit more speed to him, more athleticism, is going to get to that baseball.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this, though. Why would he do it then? Why was that date circled that he would use the defensive replacement for Rojas? Was there more to this story? Did Castellanos tick him off earlier in the game that influenced that decision to do it for the first time?
I don't think that. I mean, I think right now what you're doing for this team by metrics is not a tremendous defensive team. And if you're looking for ways to improve them late in games, if you want to help your bullpen out, this bullpen can be victimized by weak contact, can be victimized by poor defense behind it. One way to solve that is by putting a better defensive outfield behind it. And I think that's something they could try out to better themselves. We talk about what they could do at the deadline a ton. One thing they're not really going to be able to do at the deadline is improve them defensively. This is an internal improvement you can make defensively late in games. Just improving your outfield in that sense.
I don't like it, by the way.
Yeah, you don't like the defensive replacement?
I do not like the defensive placement when it's a guy that can't hit. When you have a chance that the lineup comes back around. I do not like it that it's Rojas is your defensive replacement.
Well, in that case, it only came back around to him because they scored runs.
Well, that's a possibility.
I think
it's always a possibility, and then you're caught with your pants down.
Well, no, I mean the Phillies only got back to him because the Phillies scored runs, not because the Marlins.
I don't like the defensive replacement thing when it comes to Rojas replacing Castellanos. I don't think that Castellanos should have gone crazy and put himself in this situation. But there are a lot of people out there who think that defending Rob Thomson in this situation is not the right thing to do. That what Rob did was wrong. And I'd love to hear that perspective from people, from fans who think that. Fans will always side with the player. Castellanos, for some reason, is popular with the Philly fan base. maybe because of the Liam situation, but they always will side with the player more than they will side with authority. So I'd love to hear from the text board or in telephone calls what you have to say about that. 610-632-0975. It is General Knowledge Wednesday. Here's what we're going to do. The prize, by the way, is getting to that flyer draft, and we'll tell you some specifics about it. It's Ray versus the audience, but Ray today has Amy as the lifeline. And Amy is ready for the challenge.
I'm ready.
610-632-0975. We're back after this.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. Appreciate you guys checking out things with the Mike Missanelli Show. If you want more from us, check out the playlist right here to get this one. Check out all the playlists. There's a lot to watch.